parsha is a double parsha. It's Vayakhel and Pekudei. It's the last two parshas of Sefer Shemot, and Parsha of Vayakhel deals with a reiteration of the building of the Mishkan. That is to say, we were issued a command in Truma, and we executed in Vayakhel. That's a fair general summary of what's going on. So in Vayakhel, the builder of the Mishkan was named Betzalel, and there's a very interesting discussion recorded in the Gemara in Brachot, Nun Hey Amud Aleph 55a. That's the 9th parak, at the beginning of the 9th parak, between Betzalel and Moshe. Okay, so what happens is like this. So God tells Moshe, go tell Betzalel to build the Mishkan, Aaron, the Kalim. Right, the Mishkan and the Aaron and the vessels, and Moshe goes and tells Betzalel, build the Aaron, Kalim, and Mishkan. Moshe changes the order. He reverses it, actually, which requires understanding all on its own. The fact that God told Moshe to say X, and Moshe said Y, or at least you changed up the order, that's fascinating all on its own. But okay, so then Moshe goes to tell Betzalel this, and Betzalel responds to Moshe as follows. He says, Minhago shel olam, right? The way people do things, the way things are done, is that a person first builds a house, and then he puts in the kalim, and then he puts in the vessels. But you're telling me to make the kalim first, and where am I supposed to put these kalim if I have no house to build it? So first I need to build a house, and then I'll put the kalim in. And Moshe is very taken aback. He's like, wow, you must have been in the shadows there. And that's where Betzalel gets his name, right? Betzel Kel, he was in the shadow of God. He must have been there when God spoke to Moshe, because that's exactly what God actually said. Now, you can imagine the plethora of commentaries on this episode of the Gemara, which is, many of them are fascinating, but Rav Bernstein tackles a perspective from Rav Yosef of Salant. I believe he lived in the 1900s. He must have lived in the 1800s and lived through to the 1900s. He's the author of the Be'er Yosef. We've quoted it before, I'm certain. And he offers a really interesting interpretation. And we need to ask a few questions. So first, Betzalel's argument, right? That's not the way a person normally builds a house. Well, okay, that's fair. But that is an irrelevant argument here, because this is not a normal house. This is the Mishkan. We're building a house for God. So it's fair to anticipate that there are going to be some things that are different here. And moreover, for Moshe to approach Betzalel, say, in Hashem's name, and then Moshe issues the command, and Betzalel says, well, that's not really the way you build the house. Is that your basis for questioning what Moshe has to say to you? You're right. That's not the way you build a house. This is not a regular house. It's the Mishkan. So what's with Betzalel's response? And second, when Betzalel says, where am I supposed to put the kalim? Well, we actually know, and we have spoken about this before, that everything was ready for the Mishkan to be built on the 25th of Kislev. However, we delayed the building of the Mishkan until the 1st of Nisan. So things were suspended in the meantime, and therefore the kalim had to be somewhere. So wherever we were going to put the kalim, just put them there. So, this is true. It's with hindsight. But at the end of the day, Betzalel's argument isn't even a winning argument, because that didn't make a difference in the end anyway. And the third point that Rav Bernstein, by the way, I should mention this. This is, of course, based on what Rav Bernstein has to say. I got this from his shiur. I will post it below. So Rav Bernstein says, it's also interesting that Moshe's response is like, wow, you must have overheard what God said. Betzalel gave his reasoning. Why is Moshe saying that? It's like, you must have overheard. Well, Betzalel said, he's like, look, just misvara, right? Just from thinking about it. That's not the way you build a house. Maybe he didn't actually overhear anything. So, Rav Yosef of Salant, the Be'er Yosef, explains as follows. He says, look, it is clear that Betzalel, he knew that Moshe's instructions, he knew what Moshe's instructions really were. He knew what God had said to Moshe, and that was his actual basis for, if you will, arguing with Moshe, with responding to Moshe. However, he also knows that he's speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu. This is Moshe, the man who God's chosen prophet to deliver the Torah to them, right, to lead them out of Egypt. And so, even though we don't really know why Moshe, we don't necessarily know why Moshe reversed the order. And we also don't know if Betzalel knew why Moshe reversed the order. However, this is Moshe Rabbeinu, and there's a way to speak to him. And so what Betzalel is doing, he's actually looking for a derech eretz way to get things back on track, right? To make sure that we go back in line with what HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually said to Moshe. And so, even though it's true that Bezalel knows that that's not what God said, however, there's a way to speak to Moshe Rabbeinu. And so, even though it's true that Bezalel still says what needs to be said, there's a way to go about saying it. Because he's not going to go to Moshe and be like, well, I know that's not what Hashem said to you, and so instead he offers a flawed argument. But look, it's clear to Moshe that once he hears what Bezalel is saying, he knows that Bezalel knows what actually happened. But Moshe also knows that Bezalel is treating him bekavod, as is appropriate, and that's why when Moshe hears, Bezalel, that's not the way the minhag shel olam. So he tells Bezalel, Vayakhel, you were in the shadows of God. You must have been there. You must have heard, and that's how this episode wraps up. There's what needs to be said, but there's also the way in which it should be said. That's a quote directly from Rav Bernstein, more or less verbatim. But it's an important lesson to know that there's some things that you need to say, some things, but there's a way to say it. And that's the one lesson from this week's parsha. We'll end it there. Shabbat shalom.